blood cells are an important part of our immune system, but there's also many proteins involved in our immune system. And one group of proteins that's very important is called a group of proteins, complement proteins, and they basically do a lot of things like tagging microbes for destruction. They can call for help, and they can even put holes in the membranes of microbial cells. So they're one of the fastest and most powerful parts of our immune system. So what is this complement system? So the complement system is a set of over 30 proteins that float in our blood and our tissues, and on their own they don't really do that much, but once they're triggered, they can activate each other in this specific sequence, and it's like a big reaction that we call the complement cascade. This is part of our innate immune system, so it kicks in fast even if our body has never seen an infection before, but it also supports adaptive immunity, especially when there's antibodies involved. So why is it called the complement system? The complement system was originally named this way because it complements the work of antibodies. So it helps and it enhances the ability of antibodies to clear infections. And each protein in the system has a name like C1, C2, C3. When one of these proteins is activated, it gets cut or cleaved into smaller pieces. So for example, when C3 is activated, it splits into C3A and C3B. The A fragment usually floats off to signal inflammation, and the B fragment sticks to pathogens and tags them for destruction. So C3b isn't a separate protein, it's an active part of C3, and these fragments go on to activate other complement proteins so that they can continue this reaction or this cascade. There's 3 ways that our complement system gets activated, and they kick off this complement cascade, and all of them converge at the same protein, which is C3. So there's the classical pathway, which is triggered when antibodies like IgG or IgM bind to a pathogen, to a microbe, and the antibody signals the C1 complex to start the cascade, and this is the link between adaptive immunity and complement. There's also the lectin pathway, which is triggered when mannose binding lectin, MBL, recognizes sugars on the surface of microbes. There's no antibodies needed, and this is purely part of our innate immune system. And finally, there's alternative pathway. This starts spontaneously. C3 is constantly breaking down at a low level. If C3b lands on a pathogen and isn't destroyed, it triggers the cascade. And this is the fastest and always ready pathway, which is useful during infection. So what happens during the cascade? So in the cascade, there's something called opsonization. And opsonization, I used to tell people or students that this is the same thing as phagocytosis. What it does is it tags invaders. So C3b binds to the surface of pathogens. This makes them easier to recognize and get eaten by phagocytes. So think of C3b as kind of like an eat me sticker, which is good. And then there's inflammation, which is calling for help. So small fragments like C3a and C5a act to signal inflammation. They increase blood flow and they make vessels leaky to get more immune cells. And C5a is very important because it's one of the chemoattractants in the immune system. And then finally, there's the membrane attack complex, which destroys microbes. After C5 is activated, this continues with other proteins, and together they form this membrane attack complex. So this MAC inserts into a pathogen's membranes and creates pores, which are holes, and causes the microbe to lyse. This is especially effective against gram-negative bacteria and some viruses. So the complement system is very important. It's important because it's a quick defense. It can work before our adaptive immune system kicks in. It usually starts within minutes of detecting a pathogen, like if a virus or bacteria get in you. And it works with antibodies, so it makes antibodies more effective. And antibodies can only bind. Complement are the ones that actually kill. It also connects innate and adaptive immunity. So the link between innate and adaptive immunity a lot of times is complement. There's also clinical relevancy. So Complement deficiencies, especially C3 or MAC components, make people more prone to infections like meningitis or pneumonia. And overreaction can also lead to inflammation and autoimmune diseases like lupus. There's drugs that are used to block complement activity in certain diseases. So basically, to summarize this whole thing, the complement system is a protein-based defense network, and it tags pathogens with C3b for phagocytosis, and it triggers inflammation using C3a and C5a. It can destroy microbes with the membrane attack complex, and it's very important.